on the podcast, we're going to do a wrap up from the California Democratic Party convention. I've got Peter Douche.
Peter Pat the Berner, Douche, Silver, Nate Sliver.
Yes. With me, and John Graziano with me. We've spent the last 3 days covering the convention. So we're just basically going to talk through some of the things that we witnessed, things that we thought were important, and whatever else comes up into the conversation. I wanted to first bring up some of the new media headlines that have been coming out the last 2 days in regards to Bernie Sanders. Politico had a piece this morning talking about how he had waning popularity. We've seen them all. But what was really stunning about this is while we were there at the convention, it was unbelievable how many people just wanted to see Bernie, talk to Bernie. Every time he walked into a room, the place erupted. I remember being in the Credentials Committee hearing, and I could hear him go from caucus to caucus.
Right.
You knew every time he was in a caucus because there would just be clapping and chanting and Bernie. So these guys writing these hit pieces, where were they? Because they obviously weren't at the convention.
They were probably all in the back room coordinating with each other their hit pieces. I mean, to be honest, because anyone there, you would be in a room, because the conference has a lot of breakout rooms for subcommittees and caucuses. And I mean, for example, I was in the Veterans Caucus, and right next door, you hear a big, loud, thunderous applause.
Yeah. And you just
through the wall.
Bernie. Yeah, and you just knew it was Bernie.
But it's the same thing when we were at the credentialing committee. There was just
Bernie. Right. As we were listening to Maria Estrada get her ass handed to her by the Rendon people, we could hear Bernie. And I was like, we're in here covering this, which is really important. But listen to what's going on next door.
But also the cheers for Tulsi were about as loud.
Yeah, I think Tulsi had.
She had a lot of support too.
Yeah, especially in the Veterans Committee. That was huge.
Well, let's talk about the Veterans Committee for a second.
Veterans Caucus.
Veterans Caucus
I
for a
get it
second.
wrong all the time.
That's all right. So they did some interesting things. They had the presidential candidate
forum
sort of thing, where we had what really, in my opinion, was the best speech that Tulsi gave during the convention. I think some of the highlights were she brought up the choice of being able to take medical marijuana versus opioids, where this was a problem. The VA wouldn't cover that, and so why not? Why are we trying to push these addictive opioids instead of letting them have medical marijuana?
Yeah.
I think the other big topic was deported veterans, which is a really big issue. I don't know how many people realize this. There are veterans of Iraq War that are now being deported by ICE because they're not.
How embarrassing is that as a country?
It's fucking insane.
No, that's insane. That's insane. And the thing that killed me was to see candidate after candidate. And I don't think Bernie was explicit about that. Of course, he's horrified by deporting veterans. He
brought it up too, yeah.
He brought it up. I don't remember if he gave a solution. Tulsi was very strong on it.
Right.
And then Klobuchar and John Delaney / Joe Donnelly / Dick Dumfries.
Jim Dumfries, I don't know.
What's got up there and talked about a path to citizenship. And I was like, no.
He did not know his room.
They completed their path to citizenship.
When they served in a war for this country.
Yes.
I agree. It's outrageous.
So just get some buses, go down there,
bring them home.
and bring them home.
I agree.
That's insane.
But to speak to the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So Bernie was the first person to speak at the event, and it took forever to quiet the room after he was done.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
hang on. And then half the room left.
He rolled in. To be fair, he rolled in with Dr. Cornel West and Danny Glover. So it wasn't.
He is a rock star.
And I gotta say, I was a little more excited.
And I got a hug from
meeting
Dr.
Cornel West. And you got a hug. I was a little more excited meeting Cornel West than I was the first time I met Bernie. That guy is a serious dude.
Yeah,
he's a serious dude. But I saw him at the after party, and he was after partying.
Yeah.
So
he's also serious.
As was Ben Cohen.
He's also serious about his party.
Yes.
Which I respect that. Okay, so I think the other thing that Tulsi Gabbard brought up that it was really important is the discussion on having a Department of Peace.
Yes.
So she's been an advocate for ending regime change war. And one of the things she said that really stuck with me was she said that our military was being used as Saudi Arabia's armed forces. Right. And when you think about that, that's quite a fucking statement.
And Israel.
Framing is everything. And a good politician can frame the debate to
and she's not wrong.
restructure how we talk about it.
And the thing about Tulsi is she has that experience as a veteran where she can put it in the terms that every one of those people in the room who served, they got it immediately.
It's about saving veteran lives. I mean, current.
So when she talked there, she changed my mind on two things.
She changed your mind?
She changed my mind on two things. One, if she got the nomination, I would be okay with it. If she got the nomination over Bernie.
Look, my heart's for Bernie, but I would be okay with Tulsi.
And two, if Bernie gets a nomination, she should not be his running mate. She should be Secretary of Defense. Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
Defense.
Yes.
So that is, I want to bounce over right now to the no middle ground speech, because Bernie also, as he was listing this, so this was the speech that he gave on the final day.
Can we just, before we leave the Veterans Caucus, can we just deal with the fact that I spent a full 10 minutes within stapler throwing range of Amy Klobuchar? Okay, so I get hazard pay for that.
You do.
I want double my normal pay.
To be fair, I wanted to hand her a comb.
We all should have just held up combs when she
It'll be the new lighter.
Right?
Klobuchar was worse than terrible. She was just nothing.
I don't even remember.
So I have video of it that I haven't posted yet.
The video didn't even record. It was just a blank screen.
But that
she has the same problem with mirrors. Speech.
But I have two videos. I have three. But I have Bernie with a raucous crowd.
Yeah.
Him leaving, and then of course, gavel smashing. Quiet down, quiet down.
Yeah,
no enthusiasm. Yeah. We don't want people excited about a candidate.
You are out of order.
Right, and then Klobuchar coming up, and my video resumes with empty seats right in front of her.
Yeah. People just got up.
Oh yeah, people just.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and then after Tulsi and Bernie were done, the room was pretty much emptied by the time Donnelly, aka Delaney, aka what did we need that guy's name?
Yeah, and when Delaney got up, the podium was pretty much empty.
Well, he was arguing for the Trojan horse.
Venezuela assistance,
and which did not go over well with the vets in the room.
And he also just sat there and said, "We should."
And then he didn't listen to them when they all got angry. Yeah. He just kept hammering
he just kept his script. He's so scripted. He can't. And I don't know even why we're talking about him.
Yeah,
he's such a non.
No, he literally walked by me with one person around him.
Yeah.
Which is considering they have their own tribes and people are flocking to their candidate, and he had one person who paid to be with him. Yeah, that's it. And then I told people, was that John Delaney? And they're like, Tom Donnelly? I don't know.
I know, right? I mean, I completely gave the wrong name in that tweet, and nobody corrected it for like 6 hours. That's how
raise your hand if you did not know John Delaney was running for president before the convention.
I did.
Oh,
I'll admit it.
Bastard.
Yeah, but I didn't go to the energy of actually tweeting anything about him.
Right.
$10
will I ever.
$10 if any of you can name what state he's a congressman from.
Massachusetts.
Oh, God damn it. No, we paid $10.
Oh, yeah,
I didn't know that.
$10 now. But the reason I brought it up was because of his position on Venezuela versus Tulsi's position. When you look at the stark contrast with the way both of them spoke to that question, it really became clear how completely wrong he was.
Yeah.
Well, and then he went on to get booed off the stage yesterday for saying we should not have Medicare for all. That was just beautiful.
With Hickendoper.
Yeah, Hickendoper too.
But the thing that got me, and the thing that always gets me about Tulsi, is she either has zero bullshit in her speeches, or she is the best bullshitter ever.
I think she's authentic. I mean, I
think that's the simplest explanation. Is she's just being really authentic. Like Bernie. But the thing that Tulsi had over Bernie in the Veterans Caucus is being a combat veteran, and she could speak directly to the
no, it was a really, she had
really solid, really moving.
Yeah, she had very solid answers.
Yeah.
I want to jump over to the no middle ground speech.
Right.
So this was the speech that Sanders gave on Sunday to the general session in the morning. Unfortunately, Periscope crapped out midstream on that one, but we still have, it's still recorded the video, so we will upload that later. But one of the things he talked about in terms of what Tulsi was talking about is our foreign policy positions. So the entire speech, which I'm guessing David Sirota wrote, it was a beautiful speech, but it really spoke to this idea of no middle ground, because we're progressives and we're tired of ceding territory to the right. we've done nothing but cede territory to the right. The centrists, to the point where the neolibs, the centrists, they're the exact same group as the neocons. They're arguing for the same things constantly all the time.
Right.
They want regime change in Venezuela. They want regime change in Iran. They want to support all these positions. They want the bloated defense budget. But one of the things he brought up was ending the bloated defense budget. And honestly, it's pretty mind-numbing when you consider how much more money we spend giving to these military-industrial complexes, private corporations, private intelligence firms, in comparison to the money we don't fund the VA with.
Yeah,
right.
There's something deeply immoral about that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, it comes back to how you're going to pay for things, which is the argument against all of Bernie's platform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
cut the fucking defense budget.
Well, and the thing that the story that Tulsi told about
Yeah.
the guy that was in mid-heart attack.
Oh, that's right. It was really.
And the VA would not approve the surgery he needed. And the doctor was saying he would not survive an ambulance ride to the VA. And
right. They wouldn't approve it at that hospital.
I mean,
so he would have died in the ambulance ride to another hospital.
These guys should be given a VA card where they can walk into any medical establishment anywhere and not have to pay a single dime for their treatment.
Completely agree. No.
And then they should still have the VA as a dedicated socialized medicine, because there are, and I know doctors who work at the VA, there are some very, very good people who have intentionally put aside a very lucrative career to become doctors at the VA. And the problem with the VA, there's no problem with the VA that cannot be solved by just funding it properly.
I agree, 100%. Right. So other things that he brought up in the speech was mass shootings, NRA, so no middle ground, criminal justice reform, taking on the prison industrial
the private
complex.
Prison system.
Yeah, he specifically mentioned the prison industrial complex, which I think is great. I'm guessing this is kind of being influenced by Dr. West.
And it's being influenced by having Biden in the race.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's bringing that up more and more.
Well, he should. It's an easy punching item against Biden.
The thing I love about Bernie this time versus Bernie last time is he's
punching harder.
He's punching harder. You see that he's being smarter about picking his targets.
Yeah.
And I gotta say,
it's effective.
And I see the effect of people like David Sirota and Brianna.
Bree, I'll grow Bree.
Yeah, Bree B. Joy on Twitter. Brianna Greyjoy, who is fantastic at just simply crystallizing. They both are so good at just crystallizing an issue.
They were both
going right at it.
I agree.
Yeah.
But let's bring up that. So you bring up punching up Biden. Biden didn't even bother to show up. This is. California's in play this year because we moved our primary up. And what kills me is Politico, all these other organizations are still saying that Biden's the front runner, but he couldn't even be bothered with attendance.
And with the most valuable early state.
Exactly.
And who does that sound like?
Who does that sound
Sounds like Hillary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I hadn't seen him.
He probably thinks he only has something to lose by speaking or dressing or getting hounded by,
The thing is, that's accurate.
Yeah.
He will go down in the polls the more he speaks. He will go down in the polls the more contrast is made with the other candidates.
It's Hillary. It's Hillary. If we didn't have pictures of Biden awkwardly sniffing her hair, I think this was Hillary 9000's new skin suit.
Well, right. I mean, I just want to point out, and I've said this before, but Biden's own campaign released a 2-minute video on abortion, anti-abortion, obviously.
He's had so many bad positions.
But the point I'm going to make is it's a 2-minute campaign-produced video where Joe Biden slurs his words 3 times.
You're kidding.
No, you need to watch it. He uses the wrong words and slurs his words, and the campaign released it. It wasn't like a spur of the moment.
Which means it's the best take they had.
Video.
This was the best take they had.
That's kind of scary, actually.
So, I mean, I don't want to start conspiracies about his health, but one way or another, it's a bad look, and if you're the most electable, why can't you be out speaking with people?
Right.
Maybe he was drunk. I mean, the worst thing you can do is go on video while drinking, right?
The boys are drinking over there.
It's been a long weekend.
No, this is just water.
So it's not just water. The Progressive Caucus, I was really moved by Jane Kim's speech. I think that hands down was one of the best speeches of the weekend. She started off the speech by talking about. We should say who
Jane Kim is.
So Jane Kim is I guess she's heading up Bernie's campaign here in California. I
Well, at least she's a
co-chair, I think.
She has a high
Okay.
position in
Rokana.
this company. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly what, but I know there was some connection there. But she used to be, wasn't she on the board of supervisors here in
I believe.
San Francisco?
Yes.
So
We probably should have looked this up before.
So Jane talked about as a child there was an American flag that was hanging in her house.
Yeah.
And she often wondered why they would hang the flag when, as you know, Asian immigrants, like why this could be a symbol of oppression, you know, given the history of the country.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But when she finally got around to asking her dad about it, he noted that he said to her, read what it says under the flag. And he wrote underneath, make something of it. Which is kind of it's a bit of a powerful message. And then she went on to do something that I thought was pretty gutsy in this environment. She went on to say that she's equally fearful, worried that Trump might lose as she is of Trump winning.
Yeah.
So,
which is how we were in 2016 too. Right.
And then she went on to say, let me explain my position. But I thought that was kind of a bold move for her to say that, you know, I mean, because obviously everybody's like, their main goal is to defeat Trump and not policy. And her point was like, no, our main goal shouldn't be to defeat Trump. It should be to replace really bad policy with good policy, because that's how we defeat Trump.
Yes.
And she also went on to say that one of the unintentional consequences of having Trump in office has been this idea that activists are more engaged. People in general are more aware of the issues. All of these issues, the racism, the immigration problems, like you can go down the list, the privatizations, income inequality, all of these issues were around before Trump. But a lot of these folks keep yammering on like Trump started it, like this started in 2016, but it didn't. So, you know, and then Jane Kim went on to basically say that Trump voters also want fundamental change in the country. And partially why he won was for that reason, and they knew they weren't going to get change from Clinton. So whether we like it or not, I think that is absolutely true, and I think it doesn't serve us on the left to not recognize that. And there's been a lot of that going on. So I was really happy to see Jane Kim put that out there.
Right, and that works perfectly with the no middle ground message.
I agree.
The no middle ground takes away. I mean, the middle ground is centrism, and
that's why we lose.
When your centrists are on the right and the Republicans are on the right, your compromise is 10 times more right than if you had a Democrat starting from the far left.
Exactly. So I thought that was a really bold speech. Then the next thing that happened in the Progressive Caucus that I thought was important is they had all of the contenders for the CDP chair position come in.
Oh yeah.
And this was wild to witness, because they had a paddle for a yes and a no, and they were just being shot out positions. And I cannot tell you how many times Rusty Hicks was the only person on that stage to hold up a no paddle, and it was for shit that we want. Like
Medicare for all.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
I think this was really important, auto endorsement of sitting candidates.
Of incumbents.
Right. Yeah. He was like, no, we shouldn't get rid of that. And he was the only, and this is important because this is the guy that went on to win the chair position the following day. You know,
win.
To replace Eric Bauman, who worked for, who lobbied against lowering drug prices and then resigned in scandal.
Replace Eric Bauman, whose sexual harassment Rusty was part of the enabling team on.
Yeah.
That is also an important point to bring up. You're correct.
And the thing that got me more than his no votes were the ones where he held the paddle up and he was yes, no.
Oh, he could have done that the whole time.
Which is like, I'm not going to commit.
He should have just sent a surrogate up there.
Yeah, somebody just to wave the paddle, because that's all he does.
And I want to talk about your questioning him in the press area later, because I want to talk about that with the discussion on the credentials.
Before we move on, we should just acknowledge the parrot in the room, which is we're shooting at my place, and there are 6 parrots downstairs. So if you hear screeching and squawking, that's where it's coming from.
Okay. You mean that's not the audience?
Well, they are the audience, and they apparently disapprove.
They apparently do.
Did you say apparently?
Oh, apparently. I did not.
Okay.
Thank you for
good.
Moving on. I want to talk about the Credentials Committee, because this is actually funny. I didn't realize until yesterday that we were in the Credentials Committee. We had been walking down the hall, and I had glanced over into this room, and I saw Dr. Ron Birnbaum and Janine Roan in there. And my initial brain went, oh, got to get in there. Holy shit, this AD 51 thing is still going on.
It is.
Damn it. I can't believe that the CRC is now here. They've set up shop at the damn convention because it's still going on. Like, I literally thought it was the CRC still. I didn't realize that this was a whole new, anyway, but that was where my brain went. So I spent the entire afternoon in there. It wasn't until yesterday I was talking to Lauren Steiner. She's like, no, that was the credit. I was like, oh shit, duh. Because I was wondering, and I turned to John, I said, why wasn't this on the schedule?
And then we found out why it wasn't on the schedule.
Anyway, let's talk about this, because this is why democracy dies in the dark. We were literally the only press people in that room the entire day. And these were really important meetings that were dealing with corruption, what the CaDem party is going to do about fixing the corruption. And pretty much the only guy that made any sense to me was Jim, the guy sitting on the end. He was the only one saying, no, we shouldn't tolerate any corruption at all.
What percentage of corruption is okay?
Let's be specific about what the corruption was.
Yeah.
People who followed the 2016 primary are not going to be surprised that the corruption was election fraud. Yeah,
it was. So now I'm going to break some of this down for the audience so they can get really clear on this discussion. So 8051, so these are the CaDem elections. These are the Assembly District Delegate election meetings, right? So 8051 is the one that most of you know I got hit at.
I still think you got to change your Twitter handle to chick who got punched.
Right, okay. True story. So they had to acquiesce in this particular one that there was fraud, and they vacated all of the spots except for the top 4. And they used some crazy mathematical formula here. So basically there were ballots that had unused votes on them, right? So where people only voted for 5 candidates instead of all possible candidates that they could. So they added all those up, and they fundamentally spread it out across all the voters and removed that portion equally before removing the 97 votes from it was kind of, they should have vacated the entire thing.
Yes, and that's a topic we have to talk about, because they apply this math to see if did it affect the outcome of the election or didn't. It's like you had a corrupt election.
It doesn't fucking matter. It's like, so later on in the evening, in fact, when they were pretty much doing the same song and dance with Maria Estrada and her election, I finally got to the point of listening for hours of this. I finally raised my hand and said, press question. It sounds to me like you guys are basically saying that you're okay with a little bit of corruption, but a lot of corruption, well, that's a bad thing. And I need to understand how the party can take that position.
Well, a lot of corruption is a bad look.
Out of order.
Yeah, right. And then Laura Laramendi, one of the high mucky mucks in the California Democratic Party. I don't know what position she holds, but she holds a lot of them. She just points at Tina and goes, "You are out of order."
Yeah. Right, and I wasn't at this event, but I happened to tune into your live stream right when you were called out of order.
So Pat's like, "Oh shit, what'd Tina do now?"
Yeah, and it's amazing because the out of order is that they follow Robert's rules of order.
Right. No, I know. And I was out of order, but I think I was polite enough, and the question's actually pretty salient.
But the point is, the choice to follow Robert's rules of order is strategic.
Oh, it is.
Because then they can use the magic words, "you're out of order,"
for anything they don't want to.
For stuff that they don't want to hear.
Right.
And I would say they spent a third of the time, maybe half the time, just talking about rules of order rather than addressing.
Well, and obviously they selectively violate all those rules.
Oh,
of course.
absolutely.
When it's someone they agree with, they can selectively violate.
But I want to bring up Jim on the end there, because he time and time again was the sole voice of reason on that panel, saying, no. He said, time and time again said, no, these elections should be vacated 100%, and these delegates should be allowed to stand.
Yeah.
Right.
And then who was the guy who was angry? Was so angry.
So that's an interesting, David Atkins, he is a regional director for Area 10 in the California Democratic Party. I had gotten in a couple of really marginally not nice beefs with him on Twitter over this
In other words, very Tina-like conversations. Very lefty Desiree.
But not out of order on Twitter, at least.
No, but I will have to give him props for this. Because this takes, you got to give props for props too. He actually sent me a couple days later, "Hey, I just wanted you to know, I've decided that you're 100% correct, and we need to fix this." And I just thought you should know that you've convinced me, along with some other people, that this is something we should have done a long time ago.
That was before the meeting we saw?
Yeah. And during the meeting, he did come up and introduce himself and was like, he goes, look, I'm serious about this. I think you're right. We should be using PDI. So PDI is a software where, and they used it at the second election in 51. So you basically can log in, you can verify that the person's a member of the Democratic Party, and you can verify that they live in the district.
Right.
And it's really not that big of a deal for them to do this.
They make it a big deal because they don't want to verify.
Yeah, they don't want to, because the elected officials have been monkeying around with this shit for a long time, right?
And I don't know if we said what they were actually doing, which was in Anthony Rendon's district, 8063.
Yeah.
First off, they left the progressive candidate's name
Maria
off the
Estrada.
ballot.
They left
Maria
off the
Estrada,
e-board ballot.
off of the e-board ballot. So,
hang on a second. Do we need to? I think we need to break that down. Some people might not understand. So,
but let's just finish the top level thing, because most people don't care about the Democratic designations. But what they did was they bussed in people from outside the district.
Right.
And these people were not only didn't live in the district, so they were ineligible. They weren't Democrats. They were bussing in Republicans,
or they were NPP.
Yeah. And to vote against the Democratic candidates,
right,
so that Rendon could get his slate approved, because apparently he doesn't have enough power in the legislature.
No, yeah, it's bad news. But I think also the positive side, and I think it's important to also point out the positive side. The positive side of using PDI is you catch these folks, and the Democratic Party then gets to register them. So they get to, as an added benefit, actually increase their registration in the state. How is this not a win-win?
Because they'd rather have
the elected officials.
Yeah,
because these guys are trying to maintain more power.
I think they used PDI in the Sacramento.
They did,
right?
Yeah,
so,
Karen Bernal.
Okay, so for example, my party affiliation was changed. I did not change it, but I realized because of PDI, I needed to change my registration back to Democrat.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I had been changed without my knowing, but that's a whole nother show. So I was able to re-register on the spot to vote that day.
Right. It's a good thing, right? So there's no way that this is a bad thing at all. But again, this is elected officials are already controlling in various ways 2/3 of the other delegates. They need to leave their goddamn hands off this last third. This last third is supposed to be grassroots representation from the district. And when they stack a slate and then go and they promote the slate, and I do want to mention this too, because this I found was really offensive actually. In the AD 51 portion of this day, the other slate couldn't even bother to fucking show up to defend their position. They had an attorney there.
Yeah,
So you cannot fucking tell me that group of elected officials that had run that slate didn't put their hand in that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they were bringing up was that it was the last day of Passover, and that disenfranchised Jewish voters. And I felt like I wanted to say this, but I would have been yelled out of order. One of the delegates on the opposite side that spent the entire day there with us was a rabbi.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and when they said
Dr. Ron Birnbaum's Jewish. I mean,
yeah,
so
they had a lot of Jewish people on at the election.
They did, yeah.
And the other thing, they had Jewish people on the committee that decided when to set the date.
They did, yeah. So this was sort of a
and nobody objected. The whole thing was disingenuous.
Yeah,
the other thing was that there was no parking. Was there no parking?
There was tons of parking.
There was tons of parking. They're like, people had to drive around the block.
But they're using that to excuse.
They wanted to set aside the election based on parking and Passover.
Right. So, and can we sort of appreciate the irony of this? Originally, the other two slates didn't want to have the election in this particular venue because it's way on the outside of the district, on the very far east part of LA. It's not central in the district. They wanted a more central position where people come from all areas, but they refused to.
But let's address directly.
And now they're complaining about it.
Let's address directly what that attorney was pushing for, right?
Yeah.
We can't have it on Saturday because of the Sabbath and because Palestinian Christians and because of all of this stuff.
Then we can't have it on Sunday.
And then we can't have it on Sunday because it's a Hispanic district with a lot of Catholics in it. What he wanted to do was have it during the week when the workers can't show up.
Yeah.
Right. That's what he was pushing for.
He was pushing for it. Yeah, it was very odd. But I just thought it was really offensive. This is supposed to be about the grassroots, and you guys send in an attorney to argue your case. Well, luckily for us, they stuck with the original CRC position. So in the end, there were two other slates running against the elected official slate. In the end, these other two slates had the majority of delegates placed from the second election. So which is why they were beefing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, and then they were complaining that a lot of people didn't show up. I'm like, well, you go around hitting people at the damn caucus. What the hell do you expect? You think people want to show up again?
And it was a redo, so you're going to get a lower.
You're going to get drop-offs.
Yeah, but in their defense, you were filming them.
Yeah.
You were a journalist on site, which is a hittable offense. To
Look,
the
and I
Democratic Party.
honestly think, on a certain level, Janine Roan was really did a lot of groundwork on this, because she actually went up to Sacramento and looked. She couldn't take copies of the sign-in sheets with her; they wouldn't allow that. But she went up to CaDem in Sacramento and went through the sheets and made notes.
Yeah. So one of the things that they read, I don't know if we're done with 63, but there's a couple other things to add. One of them was, literally, if you're in an LA district and you want to contest the race, you have to buy a plane ticket
to go to
or take off work to drive up to Sacramento.
Maria made a point of this, and she's right. She said, you're hamstringing poor people like myself that can't afford to fly back up, because Janine had that time off, and she could.
And she got the, well, don't be poor look from everyone on the committee.
From the you are out of order. It was really remarkable. But I think what's really important about this is nobody else was even bothering to look in this room to see what was going on. They didn't deem it important, when I think it's one of the most important things that's happening.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate. And
but the other thing was, they had people on there like David Atkins, who, when he spoke right before the vote, he basically professed to being shocked that there was cheating going on in Anthony Rendon's district. Then
I think he genuinely was shocked, because when him and I first started arguing on Twitter, he wasn't hearing what I was saying entirely. He knew some stuff had gone down, but he wasn't really getting it. I think he saw the video that I had taken. I think it's after he really was presented with more of the factual evidence, and he was like, I'm stunned that this is. I'm like, what do you think? Democrats are all playing above board? Come on, dude.
Let's get down to what he did. He professed to being stunned. He professed to being appalled. He professed to being angry at how this was carried out.
Response.
And then he voted to uphold the election.
That's true. And so I think at that point, what was happening was there was the case was being made by David and these other folks that the delegates are already up here. They paid money to get here. They paid money for hotel rooms, and we can't defrock them now because that would be really fucked up.
Well, that was the argument. That was the argument for 8051.
No, it's for both.
But hang on. The argument they made at 8051 applies because the people who were not cheating won.
Yeah,
I mean, they weren't the most progressive, but they were not cheating.
They were not cheating. They just,
in 8063, these people actively participated in election fraud.
Oh, I'm not saying I agree with the decision. I'm just
screw their hotel.
I understand.
Let them rot, because they were all criminal participants in election fraud. And they should have another room that's paid for by the state and a couple bars in front of it.
We're going to have to cut you two
off.
No
guillotine. Oh, wait, that's the wrong no guillotine gesture.
No guillotine?
No guillotine.
I thought it was like...
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So...
Besides, why do you need guillotines when you have ropes and lampposts available? Just saying.
Let's edit that out. Okay.
Okay, so let's move on. Anyway, I think this was an important thing that happened. I do think that we've now forced their hand. They're going to have to institute PDI across the state. I think the time of elected officials stacking the deck with their aides or their friends or whoever else. I think those. I don't
know if this is enough yet to do it. Based on your.
Look, they never vacate elections. The fact that they even partially vacated 8051 is a really huge win. I don't think people really get how huge of a win that is.
Well, some crazy chick got punched. What are they going to do? The thing is, when they implement PDI, then it's going to come down to who's sitting behind those lockouts when they're doing PDI.
No, I trust. I'm not as jaded as you are. I think that the work that Karen Bernal and her team have done in Sacramento in this area is really stellar, and they've proven awesome. She's awesome. They've proven that it's effective, it works, and it can be trusted. And here's the other side of the discussion is that we've now entered an area where voters really don't trust the party anymore, and they should be going out of their way to earn trust back. 2016 was a very eye-opening and also earth-shattering moment for a lot of voters. It's when they really sort of realize that the party that they thought they could trust to the end of the earth is not playing.
But I'm not convinced the party cares yet.
I'm convinced the party doesn't care.
Right.
But also, all of this squabbling about individual fraudulent elections, which there were a number of them, covers
I'm sure it wasn't the only two.
Covers up the overriding injustice in the entire setup, which is the people only get 1/3 of the delegates. Right. The rest are all appointed by the assembly or the central committee.
Right.
And I know, especially from some central committee appointees, that there are some good people, so they're not all jerks. And
they're not all jerks.
Well, it's that, and it's also a mix of people that are incumbents and people.
This is how the corporatists maintain their control. Yeah. There should be, at minimum, 50%, and I would say 100% of the delegates selected by the people. You're already an assembly member. You're effectively a super delegate in these elections. Why do you need 2/3 and then to cheat on the other paltry third that doesn't even get any power because you're going to get outvoted?
Right, and you're dealing with an issue that only the most informed voters are participating in this.
Yes.
We're talking about people that care about leadership within the Democratic Party come to vote at this thing. It's not advertised. Nobody knows to come to this thing. The Democratic Party doesn't go on TV and say, show up in your district tomorrow to vote on this. It's hidden. It's consciously hidden on purpose.
So, but we should call out a couple, there was a lot of podcasters and a lot of YouTubers from California who were promoting this. And the biggest one, of course, was Jimmy Dore, who was all over this, and he was pushing this. And I knew when I was in Sacramento, I think it was 88, when I saw people showing up with Jimmy Dore t-shirts on. And he had, I've talked to at least a dozen people who were sent from his show. So I knew we were going to win that slate. And
which makes a big difference because not that many people vote in these things. That's why Rendon is able to bring a busload of people in and change an election.
Just one busload. And literally, if we had 20 more people, 30 more people, it's an area where Californians can make a difference. And we should not only be pushing for getting more Californians, like getting mailers to go out to tell people to show up, but also getting more grassroots delegates in the voting process. Because otherwise we will always have a corporatist running the California Democratic Party forever.
Well, let's talk about that. Rusty Hicks, who is the new chair. He's being pushed as the labor guy, and he is a labor guy. But my thing is I'm a lifetime union member right here. Just because you're in union leadership doesn't mean you're a good person. There's a lot of bad union leadership out there, and that's within every union. And it's important that the union members vote out the bad guys when and where they can.
And let's be clear, the rank and file union members were for Kimberly Ellis, who was the more progressive, more democratic,
or the
small D Democratic.
Well, it's all about electing female this cycle, a person of color. Well, except for not for the DNC chair.
White's a color.
That's where they threw it out. They threw out, I mean, all these narratives they've pushed for the last 2 years don't apply to the leader of the Democratic Party in California.
No, because it's it's a convenient argument only when it's convenient to use. Like they threw it out the window all the time. Yeah. I mean, it's the same ageist arguments against Bernie Sanders. The same people that say Bernie Sanders too old to run for office have no problems supporting Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein
or Joe Biden.
Yeah. So I mean, all of a sudden it's I want to talk a little bit about Ro Khanna because he literally was everywhere this weekend.
One more thing before we do Ro Khanna about the unions.
Are you going to tell me I'm out of order?
You're out of order. I'm actually out of order, but the thing that we need to talk about, and at least mention, because I've gotten this from Maria Estrada, and I've gotten this first person from people who are in SEIU, including one woman who was up for a union steward. And when the leadership found out she was supporting Kimberly Ellis, they said, you cannot be a union steward unless you get with the program and support
surprised.
Rusty Hicks.
I'm not surprised.
So I actually
the leadership was bullying these people left and right.
I heard that 100 or so people were told that your position's in jeopardy if you don't support Kimberly Ellis.
I had a couple of SEIU.
But not enough to probably would have changed the election. But
no, but SEIU should not be doing that to begin
why
with.
is that?
That's
Right.
that's some bullshit right there. I agree. Like, as a union member, if my union leadership told me who I had to support, I'd be like,
I mean, you're a union. That's like, it's just,
especially
it's so
if
obvious.
it's not the candidate, the most progressive candidate. They did the same thing in the Clinton Sanders primary in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you endorse the candidate that's saying 13 is enough instead of the guy that's saying 15, fight for 15 or 15
Mm-hmm.
more?
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. Which of these two positions is in the best interest of your membership?
Well, and the thing is, when the
mean,
union leadership starts making autocratic decisions instead of listening to the members, it undercuts the entire reason for the union being there.
Right.
The union is not there to control the workers. The union is there to give the workers power.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is people like Rusty Hicks can buy off the leaders,
right,
and get them to drop the hammer on the rank and file members.
right.
And that just shouldn't be possible in something that's supposed to be democratic and worker controlled.
So, well, before we move on to Roe, let's mention your side eye you got from Rusty in the press pit.
Okay.
That was nice. You'll have to give me that video later.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, so we should cut that into this.
Yeah, we can put it in.
And I've tweeted it out on my account. I mean, it was literally my first act of citizen journalism ever. I just saw this.
Yeah, I wandered back from outside. I was like, wow, John's like, whoa, he's like going full journalist over there.
Yeah. And I sent it
I created a monster.
to a real journalist, Jordan Sheraton, and he came back with a lot of notes on, you could have done this better, you could have done this better, And I'm like, yep, those are all positive. But the thing is, he was just walking past, and I just pulled my phone out of my pocket and started asking him questions. And the first one was, he had to know who I was with. Who are you with? Who are you with? And I said, I'm an independent journalist. And he gave the most beautiful side.
Yeah, he really did.
He's like, this guy.
And it was side eye, but the side eye went to his controlling
it went to his controller,
his manager,
his campaign manager.
Sure this was no
he was like, get me the fuck out of here. And then I started asking him.
Look, he walked into the press pit. I mean, so he's got to assume that everybody in there really is a press related.
Yes.
Because there's no.
But the thing is,
be there to begin with.
There wasn't one.
Or that
person,
he's going to get asked some tough questions.
That wasn't one person who asked him a question. They were all like, "Oh, hey, Rusty, it's good to meet you. Yeah. When can I get an interview?" Blah blah blah, that kind of thing. There wasn't one person who stepped up and said, "What are you going to do about the fraudulent elections that put you in power?" And that's what I asked him about. And of course, he had the typical "fuck off and die" answer of, "I'm going to support a task force." He's going to appoint a task force. And then I asked him, "But what do you think the task force should do?" And he was just hum.
Yeah,
and then finally, his campaign manager, we got to go. Here's our plan for the first 100 days. And I said, I'm going to guess this doesn't address my question, but thanks anyway. And it didn't. Of course, it had nothing on there about that, and he has no idea. I mean, he knew the questions I was asking. He knew what
he was
PDI
aware
was.
of the situation, and I know, how I know he was aware of the situation is because he specifically mentioned locations.
Yes.
And look, that was the big beef that the other slate had in the second filing against the AD 51 re-election.
Right.
Yeah.
Outside
These are the cheaters that brought it up. So the cheaters that were okay with that location the first time around are now bitching about it after they lost. It's like the irony was.
Yeah, and I'm kicking myself because the question I should have asked to end it was, do you think the Democratic Party should support fraudulent elections?
Yeah.
And I guarantee he wouldn't have said no. He would have said, well, blah, blah, blah. We don't know that they're actually fraudulent, which of course we do because they were admitted.
Well, yeah, because they're going to say they're election meetings, they're not actual elections. Like there's a whole host of song and dance that they do.
The way it comes down to it, which is the same thing with the 2016 primary, is the Democratic Party is not a public institution. It's a corporation.
Yeah.
They can run things. They're allowed to run things however they want.
Absolutely.
That hasn't changed. That won't change.
Yeah. And with companies like Juul and Uber and the fossil fuel industry funding these fraudulent elections, they can do whatever the hell they want while giving casual observers the appearance that they're trying to be democratic.
Right.
They're not.
They're not. Yeah. No. This is all true.
The entire rank and file of that party was pro-Bernie, pro-Tulsi.
Yeah, I think so.
The entire leadership.
You wouldn't know that if you read Politico.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
No, and that's funny. So at the I was at the Bernie fundraiser,
Yeah.
and it was the first. It's the first speech I saw Bernie give where he was looser, unscripted, a little more. I mean, he's always sort of unscripted, but he hits the same bullet points. But he kind of went off a little bit about. He brought up the 16 Politico hit pieces in 16 hours.
Yeah.
He made a joke about
Was that Washington
not
Post?
smoking marijuana. Long pause.
Tonight.
But it was just a joke, but everybody got it. But it's the stuff he didn't want to do in front of the press.
Yeah.
And but anyway, he punched back at Politico directly.
Yeah.
Which was awesome to hear.
Yeah. He's a lot looser this time. He's like the number of zero fucks given tweets that are coming out of his account is just amazing.
I love it.
When he called out Bill Kristol
it was great.
on supporting the war. It was just.
I mean, they're writing articles saying he won't apologize for not supporting the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Like,
and he comes
is this
back,
a thing? What world are we living in here?
He comes back and says,
why?
Damn right.
Yeah, why would he apologize for that?
Damn
That was
right.
the correct
And his
position.
Iraq war vote.
I know, like these were the correct positions. Like it's ridiculous that that's even a conversation. I mean, my God, have you not seen the history of the Vietnam War? I mean, what world are you living in?
Well, that attack in terms
It's
of
insane.
manufacturing consent, just
It's
the
insane.
pearl clutching headlines, will do this undercurrent of setting the tone that the Vietnam War was not to be questioned, and Bernie Sanders is not an American. He's not in the mainstream of America by questioning the Vietnam War, and they're hoping people have short memories. The people who are alive in the Democratic Party who actually remember the Vietnam War, which are people who are a few years older than we are all happy with that. They're fine with taking that line of attack if it keeps their gravy train running.
Yeah.
And the people who were not born when the Vietnam War was going on don't have as much information and enough firsthand information. I mean, it's
crazy to think that.
I was 10 when the Vietnam War ended,
there.
but I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, where the city was just torn apart by protests, so I was aware of it.
Right.
But not everyone is.
Very frustrating. So Roe was absolutely everywhere. It was like, where in the world is Roe? It was like, you could do that.
It was the opposite of where's Joe Biden.
Exactly. Like Roe,
It wasn't where's Roe, it's here's Roe.
Here's
again.
Roe, yeah. I think I saw Roe speak like 7 or 8 times.
Yeah. He was at the PDA conference.
He was at everywhere.
We introduced
practically
Bernie at the Veterans Conference.
I was supposed to introduce Senator Sanders. I'll do that, but I'll just speak for 30 seconds.
Yeah. He was at the Progressive Caucus. Everywhere.
And he said a lot of very nice things.
Yeah, no, he made some really good, solid speeches, I think. And I also appreciated the fact that he wasn't pacing everywhere. Everybody else you're trying to cover is like pacing. He plants his feet and stands there.
Yeah,
this is good.
Well, my theory was that was his progressive twin brother, Ro Khanna.
Right.
And then Ro Khanna 2 is the guy who kisses Nancy Pelosi's ass
and
endorses Joe Crowley over AOC.
Yeah, I don't get that. Like, how is this?
I don't know if we should go there, but I kind of have a beef with him too. He undermines.
Go there.
He undermines Bernie's platform, being a co-chair. Of his platform and supporting one of the Medicare for All alternatives.
Yeah.
Because the no middle ground literally is the new.
I agree.
He supports the alternative. He supports one of the.
He supported one of the other bills
Medicare
as well,
for America,
recently.
the fake one.
I really don't know which one.
I can't figure the guy. I mean, I
can't figure him out.
The thing about Roe was
sometimes I really like him. Other days I'm like,
he's a congressman from Silicon Valley. And you don't get to be the congressman from Silicon Valley if you're not nice to billionaires and tech moguls and all of those people.
Right.
And Roe himself is a very wealthy man. So he operates in different circles than the people who I used to work with, the frontline workers who were making 60, 70,000 a year.
Right.
Unless they are on H-1B visa, then they were making 50,000 a year. And
you can't even pay rent in San Jose on that.
You can if you live with 5 other people.
Jesus.
This is what they're doing. And of course, what has Roe done to address that income disparity in Silicon Valley?
I would guess not much.
What has Roe done for the stress and the overwhelming and illegal demands for free overtime from these people? There are people who are driven 100-hour weeks. They're on a salary. They make $60K, and I've been in job interviews with with a CEO who says, everybody here who comes on works a minimum of 60-hour weeks. And they tell you that you go through the entire interview process. They give you the offer. You sign the offer. And then he says, you're working a minimum of 60-hour weeks.
Right.
Fuck that.
And then what are you going to do? You've already told your other offers to go hang.
Right.
You know, and then they drop this on you.
And then they raise your rent $600 a month.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I'm stuck.
What's the average rent in San Jose?
Oh, I hate to think of it. I don't know.
3,000 or 4,000, I would
know.
think, a month or something crazy, right?
Something nuts.
I mean, it's
Well,
like,
I know
what,
that-
3,200 in San Francisco.
And there's no rent control.
There are
Same
one bedrooms.
yesterday?
There are one bedrooms here in Berkeley going for $3,800 a month.
Yeah.
So it's just out of reach of just about anybody unless
Well,
you're in upper management.
I think this is an important part of the discussion just because it's relative.
Mhm.
In other parts of the country, making $60,000 a year is probably a good salary. But here it's not. You're not able to make
You
ends
can't
meet.
survive in California. I
Not
mean,
only-
in San Francisco.
Like, I mean, we just
on
raised the minimum
$60,000.
wage in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, right? And like $15 an hour is not enough by a long shot. Are you kidding me?
No, it should be 25 at least.
I agree, but this is where we're at.
Because if you're paying $40,000 a year in rent, if you have to have
Yeah.
a place for a family, you don't got a lot to live on.
No. It's
Well,
like it's
I mean,
rough.
that's the point. How do you ever buy a house then?
You don't.
You know, how do
You
you,
don't.
that's what's changed in
Here's-
the American dream.
Here's how you buy a house, and here's what's driving housing and rental prices in the Bay Area. You buy the house the way that I bought my house. You win the stock options lottery. I worked at
Mhm.
Apple.
Yeah.
That's how I
Lift
bought.
yourself up from your bootstraps.
So for
Get
me,
some
Or you do what I
options.
do.
Yeah.
You buy a house in East LA when you could still afford to buy a house in East LA.
but the thing is, my stock options, I mean, I know I worked and I'm very proud of what I did for Apple, but at the end of the day, they were a bunch of luck.
Mm-hmm.
I got lucky. Other people didn't get lucky.
I know.
And
It
it's the
is.
same thing. And so what happens is you have these people who have money they didn't earn. Okay.
Yeah, no.
I
right.
didn't earn that money.
No.
And so they're willing to throw cash at a house. And then you have the people who earn their money who can never get in the door because the housing prices are being bid up by these people to whom
Hedge funds.
the money doesn't really
We've
mean
had
anything.
hedge funds buying property.
And now, yes, and now we have hedge funds, we have foreign investors. China is investing, and they
Right.
leave
They
these
did a vacancy
they leave
tax,
these properties.
like they did.
They
in
need
Vancouver.
a confiscatory vacancy tax, because the idea that you're just going to buy up these units and let them sit empty for an investment is appalling, because this is not like some stock in a company. These are
No,
people's
I know,
homes.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah,
So let's talk about the PDA luncheon, Progressive Democrats of America.
Or public displays of affection.
Pete Noah, Progressive Democrats.
Okay.
I'm a member of this organization. I love this organization. Alan Minsky is the current executive director. I've had him on the podcast. He's also lives in District 34. He's my
Mhm.
neighbor. But Alan has a very interesting background. He was the program director at KPFK for years, so he did progressive radio. His dad is Hyman Minsky, the famous economist, and Alan also has degrees in economics. But he's working really hard to set up, which I think is an interesting thing, to set up little mini PDA groups in every single district. So he wants there to be a PDA District 34, a PDA District 51, a PDA, like
Right.
every district in the United States would have. And the responsibility of the volunteers in that little cell group would be to obviously get everybody to contact their legislators on important bills, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is fundamentally a really
Right.
strong way to go about grassroots volunteer activism. So that's his goal. He's starting to work on that now. I thought he had some really good speakers at the luncheon. I enjoyed.
loved the Sunrise Movement kids.
Yeah,
So they
those
were
awesome.
great.
They need to tag
They
along
were-
with Bernie's
they
campaign
weren't-
whenever possible.
But they had they weren't part of this. I'm sure they're working on the exact same mission. So I don't know how closely related, but they had a much better name. It was Kids versus the Apocalypse.
Oh yeah. There were two groups there. There was the Sunrise
And there was the Kids versus the Apocalypse.
which were they were great. I thought Pamela Price was fantastic.
great.
What a fireball! Right?
Yeah, if anybody out there wants to find like the next star in the progressive movement,
Pamela Price.
look up Pamela Price. She ran for
Mhm.
Attorney General or district attorney of Oakland.
Yeah.
And she would have
won last time.
She should have won last time. This would have been
that would have been a massive game changer in the state for criminal justice.
She's one of these
another black woman not supported by the Democratic Party.
Of course.
Yeah.
She's one of these radical district attorneys. She would have been that is not chums with the cops.
The anti-Kamala Harris.
She's the anti-Kamala Harris.
She's a civil rights
she's like the guy in Philadelphia who I really respect and can remember his name.
What is his name?
We'll edit that in later.
Well, it'll be the narrator voice.
No, it's right on the top.
But anyhow, I mean, she was in favor of things like budgetary justification for sentencing. In other words, if you're going to put someone into jail, you have to justify
that it's worth it.
The cost of putting them in jail. She's for
money bail reform.
She's for eliminating cash bail. She's for eliminating these forced plea bargains and giving people opportunity to work outside of going to jail.
Right.
And of course, this is the thing that should have been happening all the time. It is the thing that happens all the time if you're a white collar criminal. And you get all these opportunities, so your life isn't ruined.
Right.
But if you have a black kid who breaks into a car and steals a laptop, first offense, he's going to do 5-10 years.
Which is ridiculous.
Even if he wasn't the guy that did it, if they arrested him for it,
he's going to plea bargain.
They can make him plea because he can't afford an attorney. He can't afford bail, so he'll plea out and he'll do some time.
There's kids that are in just sitting there without having gone to trial yet, simply because they can't afford to post bail. It's insane.
Yeah, and Pamela Price, this
is not justice.
No.
Just like every other police department, urban police department, the Oakland PD needs a lot of reform, and someone like Pamela Price would be helpful. Yeah, pushed that through. But of course, the police union.
I could imagine they couldn't.
Were just protected and served the shit out of her with bullying people and trying to get people to go against her and talking about how.
But this is where Democratic leadership makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of who's the senator, the congressman, the party people can push these agendas within the party.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then being California, we're 1,000 times more powerful because we fund the DNC.
Right.
We basically fund the Democratic Party.
Yeah, California is.
But we can't use that leverage without the people within the party here being on board with us.
Right.
Well, it's a problem because a lot of them have paid positions in the Democratic Party. This is their job. This is their career. If they go against the establishment line, they will not have those paid positions. So it comes into this sort of completely perverse situation where the shittier you are at your job, the higher you will rise within the party. But if you actually advocate for the people, if you actually advocate for the planet against the corporate interests, you will get drummed out of the party. And people were threatened with this. Kimberly Ellis, who ran as the more progressive chair, the less corporate chair, was threatened with this last time when she was running against this criminal Eric Bauman, who ended up getting drummed out for sexual assault.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So I loved Pamela Price. I thought Javanka Beckles was another phenomenal speech that she gave.
And I think we saw both of them at the Our Revolution thing Tina Turner hosted last cycle.
Oh, probably.
Sorry, Nina Turner. You're here, so I'm like, Nina Turner. Yeah.
Tina Turner is Nina and I together.
Yes.
Kind of
scary fusion, but yes.
Run.
But they were both great.
Yeah.
And it felt like they had the world's support, and they both lost. They
had the support of the people, of the workers, of the middle class and poor in the East Bay, which meant it didn't matter. And that's the thing.
Because
the wealthy determine the election, and
Buffy Wicks, like a lot of the stuff she did was pretty fucking racist.
It's not like it was pretty fucking racist. Let's just say it outright. Buffy Wicks is a racist.
I mean, the people keep our neighborhood safe.
The people who work on her campaign, including our friend Dean of Dublin, are racists. And they ran a racist campaign against a black woman who had roots in the community. And there were things where, and Jovanka mentioned this, where she would show up in a suit, in a business suit. Buffy would show up with her kid wearing yoga pants.
Yeah.
And
It's in the bag.
And
she knew it was in the bag.
And the comment afterward would be about how unprofessional Jovanka Beckles
Yeah,
is.
can you believe that? Or no, my favorite thing was not favorite, but it's appalling, but this really shows you how fucked up the party is. She said that they had one flyer they put out where they darkened her skin.
No, not one flyer. I mean, I have the mailer, and I can give you the gift that you can put in at this point. But they literally went through and photoshopped Jovanka's face to make her skin darker while they talked about how angry she was, how lazy she was, how unintelligent she was, how
all the dog whistles.
She was.
All the dog whistles.
It's not that's the old people can
Berkeley.
hear it.
This is Berkeley, for fuck's sake.
Well, it was Berkeley, it was Oakland, it was Richmond. I mean, it was all the places where the working people
doesn't Buffy live here in Berkeley? Or am I wrong on that?
I think she does, but I don't care. I mean, she's in the district.
Hey, buddy, this is your town.
She lived in the district for under 2 years when she ran. She's never been in this district. Jovanka grew up here. She's a mental health expert. Yeah, and Buffy came in. David Axelrod was tweeting endorsements. Obama endorsed them. And what happened was
that is really gross.
She ran an overtly racist, overtly classist campaign.
Yeah, how could he endorse Buffy? How?
Axelrod?
No, Obama.
How could he drone bomb children? What do you think this guy is?
No, I just, it's just painful.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You still have that old 2008 feeling.
We all do.
We all felt good that Obama got elected, and I was like, you do that degrading process afterwards where it's, well, we have to hold his feet to the fire. It's like, God damn it, just do your fucking job.
Yeah. Very upsetting.
Deep
breath, right? Then we also heard from a couple of candidates, another one that's running for DA, Chase. What was Chase's last name?
Ooh, yeah, don't know.
He had an interesting speech. He sounded like he was ready to also do criminal justice reform, so that was important. I just thought their lineup was pretty solid, and it was a good afternoon of speeches.
It was all the messages we want to hear from the Democratic Party
that we're not
that we don't hear.
And again, can I mention another thing? We were the only press people in that entire room.
Yep.
Once again.
How is that a thing? How is Peter Douche covering this event? I mean, how is my parody account there and there isn't anyone else who gives a shit about progressive issues?
Right.
Well, and
I mean,
and the most egregious.
Yes.
Most egregious was that I was acting as her photographer. As I told people, the last camera I owned had film in it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was just like, but these are the people who show up, just seat of the pants, grassroots journalists, who, by the way, everyone should think about this, okay? If I can go there and act as a photographer, anybody can do this.
Well,
and they should.
Technically you can, but technically you can't because you won't be able to get a press credential from the party. But
well, make up a news organization. Make up your news organization. Get a domain on GoDaddy, and you got press credentials.
No, they'll probably say no.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong, but
some of the events could have been covered. They could have covered the PDA.
They could, yeah.
They could have. They choose.
Right.
My point is,
it's not like we needed press credentials.
We didn't for that. You just had to pay to attend the event.
Oh, true that. Yeah,
right.
True that. But it's just amazing to me that these things are going on, really important things that are going on. And
not covered.
Not covered.
Yeah.
Time and time again, we thought these things were important to cover, and nobody else did.
Yeah.
Well, the story at the convention, I mean, it should have been Joe Biden is not here.
Yeah, that should have been a major story.
Number one story.
Yeah.
And instead, they're leading with Joe Biden is a mile ahead of Bernie.
Right.
His popularity is waning.
It's amazing.
You're gonna I want to know where these political writers were that they saw his popularity waning. They were obviously not at the convention, because if they had actually been there, they would hear how fucking ridiculous.
Are you kidding?
Most of the booths are already packed up, but Berners is still here, signing up to volunteer.
They were totally at the convention. They knew how ridiculous it was.
That's the point.
They wrote the lie anyway.
They wrote the lie. You couldn't be at the convention and believe Bernie's enthusiasm was waning.
Yeah,
You couldn't believe
you could literally hear the hand clapping
Kamala Harris
screaming like 3 doors down.
Through
Through the ceiling or wherever, it was remarkable. Yeah, there's no way that his popularity is waning at all. So that's just a ridiculous claim. But I felt really angry when I read that this morning, because I still have a belief that the fourth estate has a certain obligation to public service. And every time I feel let down by something like this,
the people getting paid to be part of the fourth estate just don't give a fuck for the most part. And that's what I'm saying is it's up to people like us.
Yeah, I agree.
Who just, as long as you got a phone with a camera on it, you're a journalist.
Yeah.
And go be a journalist.
Yeah.
You don't have to get into these events. Wait by the door and wait till the schmucks walk out.
Look,
and
I get much more salient information from my Twitter feed these days than I do. I don't even watch mainstream media. I think I watch Democracy Now! And that's about it.
And that's even a little.
Well, I actually will admit to watching CNN and MSNBC regularly, but it's just to follow the bullshit narratives.
This is why
to understand the situation.
This is why you have booze in front of you now, right?
That's why I have booze, and that's why I'm on Twitter, and that's why I had to create a parody account. Because as myself, I just want to yell "fuck" the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. All right.
Yeah,
so,
but it's amazing. Anyway.
So what are some of the other highlights that you folks want to discuss? I've sort of hijacked the conversation.
The questions near the close of the conference, of the convention, the people who got up in front of the mic and were saying,
okay,
because we're sitting there and while Bernie is speaking, there's giant ads on the screen for Juul, the tobacco company.
Wait, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. And while he was talking,
I was down in front of the podium.
Yeah, so you didn't see this, but on the sides they're running ads for Juul, they're running ads for Uber.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And then the people got up.
Wait. What? I did not see this.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, they were running ads for all the people all the corporations that gave them money. And then these very brave delegates who, when they go up to the mic,
they got mad.
The people on stage know who they are. Yeah. They know who their name is. They know what assembly district they're from. These are people who are in the party.
Yes.
And they got up to that mic and they said, why are you taking money from these corporations? Uber, who doesn't allow union, who screws over their workers at every opportunity. Juul, that targets minors with tobacco ads and tobacco products. And the fossil fuel industry, and why are you taking money from that? And the smug motherfuckers up on stage were like, well, we need money.
Yeah, I heard that part.
And I'm just
I had not seen the ads though.
I missed that too.
And the thing is, if the California Democratic Party just went hard left, pro-worker,
they wouldn't need to take money from corporations. They would get more donations from people like me.
They would be overwhelmed.
Do you know the last time I gave them money? You know how long ago it was?
Yeah.
And this is the reason why.
No, we're giving
why
the
would I
candidates
give them
directly.
money? That's right.
Yeah. You know who wouldn't?
Right.
But you know who wouldn't get money? Those empty fucking suits on the stage.
No, of course
not.
And nor should they be given money. They shouldn't even be on that fucking stage.
Yeah. So you have this tiny minority of people in the Democratic Party who are there simply to protect their own gravy train at the expense of the entire state, and because of Californians' influence at the expense of the entire country, and because of Americans' influence at the expense of the entire world. All they're there for is to line their pockets. And these people are personally just disgusting. So the people who went after Maria Estrada, the white guy who called her a racist.
Yeah, that was another thing that happened. Yeah, white Rendon's fanatic.
You see these people. There was a phrase that we used to use at TYT called "on face alone," right?
Yeah. That
lawyer that came in that tried to overturn the 80-51 second election.
Yeah.
On face alone, that guy was a walking dumpster fire. And every one of these people
totally was.
just ooze slime out of every pore.
Slimy.
And it's like, how do you get to be that way? Just to know that your decisions are killing people.
We shouldn't have even been allowed to do that. Those delegates should have been told that they had to defend their position themselves. And if they couldn't be bothered with that, then automatic loss. Honestly, they're the ones that brought the challenge. They were the cheaters that turned around and said, you guys are the ones that are
Right.
suppressing the vote, not us, the cheaters. It was fucking ridiculous.
So, and this is what you're asking our last takeaway on the thing. But one thing that struck me the most was just how little has changed. So the biggest criticism, obviously, in 2016 was that the Democratic Party put its fingers on the scale, stepped on the scale, jumped on the scale, changed the mathematics and the computers on the scale.
With them as they
right.
were
So,
on the scale.
so here we are at the Democratic Convention in California, or CaDem, whatever.
I call it
CaDem.
I
don't
call
know.
It's CaDem, but I call it CalDem because people don't understand.
People don't know what CaDem is.
Outside of our world, people go, "What is CaDem?" So if I say CalDem, people know.
Which is
a Democratic
another
Party
tiny
function.
footnote of how they use jargon to exclude as many people as possible.
So I just want to make sure and get this across. So everyone showing up this event for press has to get a lanyard with your press pass, and they were giving these out with Kamala Harris lanyards. So the press has to walk around with Kamala Harris lanyards, and the DNC and the Democratic Party and the California Democratic Party is allowing that.
Yeah.
Well, we did.
There was a builders association.
There was a builders association next to us. We wore those instead.
We stole from the builders association.
Right,
yeah.
but how ridiculous is that? I mean, it's the most.
Ridiculous.
I'd rather have a
It's
paint
just so
advertisement
insulting.
on my neck.
It's so insulting.
It is insulting.
Yeah, and the thing, and speaking of insulting, we didn't talk about Barbara Lee in front of the press.
Oh, pitching Kamala and getting booed.
Okay,
got
so
booed, yeah.
so Roe got up there, and there was a bunch of people, including I'm sorry, I just blanked on her name. But Jane Kim, who are working on Bernie's campaign, who are supporting Bernie's campaign, who did not go up there and shill for their candidate. In fact, Jane never.
Yeah,
It wasn't the time for it.
Like Roe came out and was just like, you know where I'm coming from. I'm working on Bernie's campaign, and that was it. And Jane got up there and said, I'm not even going to mention his name. I'm just going to talk about what we need to do.
Yeah. But she gave a great speech.
And then Barbara Lee gets up there.
Oh God, it was so awful.
And just rolls out
it was awful.
This scripted campaign ad for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it was bad.
And I think for a lot of people, that was their last friggin' straw.
I mean, this is somebody I have had a tremendous amount of respect for. She was always been the one anti-war.
That's because you don't live in her district.
Okay, maybe so.
Well, her endorsement and Dolores Huerta's.
Yeah, I just honestly though
disgust me.
It was really bad. No, it was really bad.
But back to the event, yes.
It was bad. I mean, it's exactly like
so what happened first?
So the delegates started getting very upset.
Yeah. So what happened first when she started in on this is people just stood up and walked out. And it was clearly not an organized thing. Just people stood up, turned their backs, and walked out. And then she didn't get the sense of the room. And she kept going.
She called Kamala a progressive.
Yeah, and she mentioned a lot of Bernie's policies that Kamala is co-opting and watering down.
So then people started booing.
Right? And they should have. Barbara Lee is.
And they were chanting Bernie, Bernie, Bernie too.
Yeah.
But I don't want to tie it into the booing because people booed because the message was terrible.
But the fact is,
it was a twofold thing. It was A, the message was terrible, and B, why was she there shilling for Kamala? Like everybody else had come in there to give an actual speech about where the party needs to go. What are the progressive issues that the Progressive Caucus should be focusing on?
Yeah.
And she rolls in there, and everybody was excited to hear from, like, it was like, oh, yeah, Barbara, she's going to talk to us about ending regime change war, some of the things that we look to Barbara for leadership on. And instead, she did this.
Yeah.
It was like.
Yep, it's gross.
And we know this is such a cynical move.
It's cynical.
Because Barbara Lee is such a hero to the workers and the people of color in the East Bay. We know why she's there.
And to the anti-war movement.
She's doing what
I didn't expect it.
All of these fake progressives are there to do, which is she's there to sell Republican policies to the peasants.
I was really disappointed.
And there's just no excuse for her, especially this early on in the primary, to accept an endorsement to endorse Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Well, she wrapped them all up early. She got to do some. She had like 200 endorsements a weekend to California endorsements.
Yeah.
I think they're going to end up being completely meaningless. She's not even popular. I mean, she's ranked 3 in the state as far as the polling's going, I think, right now. I mean, she's not.
She's
not
a distant third in her own state.
That's what I'm saying. So she's
against 2 white men.
Well, she's done if she doesn't get
right.
50%-ish in California.
Yeah.
No, remains to be seen, but I don't see her as a contender at this point.
I also don't see her dropping out.
No.
Right? I mean,
well, there would be no benefit for her to drop out. If anything, it ups her brand.
There are certain people who are who have enough corporate funding to take it all the way to the convention. They're hoping that more people have enough funding to take it all the way to the convention. And if Bernie starts going well, those people will magically get enough funding to take it all the way.
But you've got to reboot Kamala. You'll have to do Kamala 3.0, 4.0, 5.0.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's sustainable.
If she starts
with all the money in the world,
if she starts live streaming her trips to the dentist, we know she's in trouble.
It's coming. Do you know that Hickenlooper's MSNBC town hall had more people watching it than Beto's?
Yeah.
I just thought I'd share that because
no, I didn't know that.
You know, that undermines the whole Beto argument.
Was that the one where we talked about watching porn with his
Did
mother?
anybody see Beto this weekend? I didn't see him anywhere.
Hickenlooper is the guy.
I talked about watching porn with his mother.
Did anyone spot Beto standing on any tables this weekend anywhere?
No. I think we've
and we'd see him because he's 10 feet tall.
I think we successfully embarrassed. I didn't see Beto once.
I saw his people. There were a lot of signs, like looked like paid workers holding signs. To be honest.
Yeah. I think he spoke at the general session on Saturday, but I never saw him anywhere.
Just saw people with signs.
Okay. Last question. Favorite speech that you saw? It could be any of the speeches, including Bernie's fundraising speech.
I like Tulsi at the Veterans Union, but I got to go with the fundraiser Bernie speech. Just cutting the bullshit, talking more directly to people.
And when you began talking to people and you say, think big, not small, ask a 2-worded question, why not?
And seeing the humorous side of it, the pot.
Mm-hmm. See, and the confidence.
I mean, that's pretty funny.
What people are missing, and we should not be confident, but we should not lose faith because he's still confident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we are doing well, despite all the narratives out there. And his speech really reinforced that for me.
So, I had signed up to do help set up for the Veterans Caucus. I wasn't able to go to the fundraisers. So I'm with you on Tulsi's speech. I think that was...
As your President and Commander-in-Chief, I will end wasteful regime change wars that have taken far too many lives, that have made our country less safe.
That was a very moving and really impactful speech. And I think if she can maintain that, she's going to be one of the serious contenders when the convention goes around.
I think she will be. Wow.
I would like her to be.
I'm surprised you didn't pick the speech that I'm going to pick. No middle ground.
The no middle ground,
Yes.
I think first of all, it's not like we didn't love every speech Bernie gave, right? And I loved the no middle ground speech. But to see a candidate, and Bernie was the same way. I think he just didn't carry the, former combat veteran gravitas that Tulsi brought to it. Yeah. But to see both of them
she was really in her environment in that room.
To see both of them speaking to a small room,
right. I mean, there was maybe 20 people in there.
Yeah, and they were speaking from the heart. Yeah. Right? They were speaking, there was probably 100 people.
Was there?
Oh, yeah. It was, I mean, they were getting votes.
I was really focused on,
80 to 50. I mean, there was maybe 100, 200 people in the room, but they were speaking.
No, there couldn't have been that many. That room didn't hold that many.
Veterans, 200.
Yeah, let's not argue about them. But there was a small room.
Do you need Nate Silver to check in?
Yeah, Nate Silver can check in.
176.
There's a 71.4% chance that's the right number.
Right.
But that, to see her speaking from the heart and really see the emotion on her face when she was addressing this issue, because you know that they're her issues as well. That really got to me. I mean, I think I'm still a Bernie guy. I would prefer that he win the nomination.
I just think that's her lane.
Yeah,
she's always going to be
right.
a little better in that lane than Bernie.
Yep.
But get her outside that lane, I still like her and support her. But it's all Bernie.
But you said favorite speech, not favorite candidate.
Right, no, I said favorite speech, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would say my second runner-up would be Jane Kim's speech.
Yes.
And
I missed that.
And I got to give honorable mention to Pamela Price.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So now that we did that, worst speech.
Oh,
Worst
God,
speech.
without any competition whatsoever, Donnelly, Delaney, that guy's speech. No competition.
I think there's strong competition.
No, you do. Wait, look, he got booed off the damn stage.
Yeah.
I mean, and he didn't back down. The delegates were booing.
He couldn't talk. They were booing so
They
loud.
were booing so loud, and he carried on. He followed up this "no, we shouldn't do Medicare for all" statement, and after this insane booing was going on, he followed that up with saying, "Well, we have to make sure that all these people don't get thrown off health insurance." Which because lefty face had to chime in. I screamed at him, "That's the fucking point!"
Right.
Yeah.
We have Medicare for all. We don't need the fucking private insurance. Are you kidding me with this?
What
competition was there to that?
Yeah.
The thing is, I loved that speech for the same reason. I enjoyed that.
The transparency.
I enjoyed that. But I
shows you
for the absolute cringeworthy, clueless violation of propriety and the reason she was there. I have to give it to Barbara Lee's shilling for Kamala Harris at the Progressive Caucus. That made my stomach turn.
It was bad. All right, that's fair.
How about you?
Honestly, I left all the awful ones. I didn't stay through any awful speech.
Which was the awfulest you left?
Well, so God, geez, that's a good question. Pelosi in the main room, I had to leave.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't handle any Pelosi.
I couldn't even drag my ass to that speech.
Yeah, I knew I would handle it.
And seeing people waving Pelosi signs, like there's some reason to be supporting Pelosi at this thing. Like, why is there? She's not running for election.
They're all her
so it's
staffers.
just PR.
They're the
for
Puma,
Pelosi.
the Puma nuts.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, but
Puma's got a Puma.
when you have to manufacture support for someone who's not up for re-election, why is that even a thing?
Because she's not popular outside.
Right, she's so unpopular.
The only people she's popular with are the wealthy people in her district.
Mm-hmm. Right, but this is an effort to make her more popular with people within the party.
Right, it's not going to happen.
But why should you have to do that? Like, if I have a job and I'm CEO, they're not like, Pat, CEO, and there aren't signs saying you're amazing. You know, you don't need that. I'm not running for office. I'm not.
Yeah. And I got to give honorable mention to Amy Klobuchar at the Veterans Caucus. She got up and spoke
she wasn't the worst.
No,
So
but the reason
Yeah,
I'm giving her honorable mention
It
is
was
she got up in front of a bunch of veterans, you know, who came from combat, who are suffering from mental health issues, who are suffering from homelessness, who are suffering from all kinds of things. And I can't remember a fucking word she said.
Right.
It was just
It was so milquetoast.
completely non-existent.
Yeah.
And she sat at the podium while they tried to tamp down the enthusiasm from Bernie, and she was very sour. She's very sour-faced the whole time.
that.
She had a look on her face
Bernie
like
is
she
a hard act to
swallowed
follow.
that comb.
She
was
would
eating salad.
stab him.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. With a comb.
With a sharp comb.
Yeah, and I was admittedly worried because
Shank.
I was within range of anything she wanted to throw, but
Staplers.
it literally just did not stick in my brain.
No,
she was so just nondescript in what she was talking
But one of my favorite moments was at the Veterans Caucus when Bernie finished and gave Tulsi a hug on the way out.
Yeah, that was nice.
Like, that was a very warm. Like, you can tell they're still allies, of course.
Yeah,
and
of course.
At the end of the day, people worried about Tulsi.
Imagine
undermining Bernie. That's not a thing.
If you want to imagine like a perfect world, imagine a convention where Bernie and Tulsi are the only ones left fighting for the nomination.
Yeah, it might come down to it.
No, they won't allow that. I'm very pessimistic on how those two are going to be, how far they're going to be allowed to advance.
I hear what you're saying, but I have a little more optimism. I think things are changing in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Final parting words. Peter Douche.
Check your registration. They're going to be up to a lot of fuckery again, and if you're in California, don't listen to these party people saying, oh, our elections are so safe and secure that nobody can change your registration. Check your registration. Make sure you're registered as a Democrat so you can vote in the primary election.
Well, you can still vote if you're MPP, but I suggest you do what you do, because that's where the shenanigans
you can
come
check
in.
online, because you'll get changed to Green Party or
NPP.
NPP, and if you have to get a special ballot, you're probably
Right.
not going to get counted. So you want to be
that's what I was going to say. You want to make
registered
sure
as a
that it'll be-
Democrat for the primary. If
And
you want to
check
switch back, I will. But
And check it a few days before the election, because that's when mine got switched.
if you're committed to voting for Bernie, you can vote early, and that gives you time to
Vote early,
check
vote
how
often.
that gives you time to go and check how your vote has been counted.
That's right.
Yeah.
John.
Oh, my last words?
Yes.
I continue to go back and forth between thinking the California Democratic Party is a complete lost cause and just should be burned to the ground. And then I see people like the rank and file who got up and challenged the party leadership at the end.
It's changing.
And then I have, for me, which is unusual, a little bit of hope about this. But the thing is, the Democratic Party in California is only as good as the people who participate in it.
Yeah,
and the numbers are trending on our side. So if you want to have the party infrastructure, the party apparatus, the ballot access that they have worked so hard to keep away from other parties, progressives, in addition to starting third parties and pushing them, should overwhelm the Democratic Party. Okay, there should be so many people showing up for those CaDem's elections that they can't possibly cheat. They should have people attending as observers, even if they're not delegates, to these party conventions, because not all those people who walked up to the mic were delegates. Those were people who were advocating as part of the convention and asking questions. It was
No, they were all delegates.
Was that really?
Yeah, you're not allowed in the room unless you're press or delegate.
Did I just pull a Naomi Wolf?
You did.
Okay.
I'll edit that out.
Okay. I thought the observer. You can leave it in if I look like an asshole. I was under the impression that, but the thing is that the progressive slates of delegates, are winning. Should we wait?
No.
They're winning, and we're getting to the end of this. But I think that there are some signs of hope. I'm not willing to throw my hat back in with the Democratic Party. I think we need to work outside it as well.
Yeah, no, I'm all for an inside-outside strategy. And in fact, that's one of the things I like about PDA. PDA agrees with that strategy, which is why they've thrown their support behind independent and green candidates as well. So even though it's progressive Democrats of America, they do have an inside-outside strategy. So I agree with you. Look, I'm all about coalition building. If you're leftists and you want to fight for progressive causes, I don't give a shit what letter you have after your name. If you support the policies that I support, I'm going to support you. So it's,
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming on.
That was fun.
Okay.
Multi-high five.
Multi-high five.
Wait, where's mine?
Oh, wait. What?
What?